GA Talks welcome to Reverend Cody Nielson.
Good morning. I hope you're all very awake this morning. So I was given a limited amount of time to talk, and I might be being given even a more limited amount of time to talk, so I'm going to try to talk fast. And I'm not using any slides, so you'll just have to listen to what I have to say, and if you get bored, you can fall asleep, walk out of the room, any way you want. But in 1998, an event took place just up the road at Wellesley College that changed the face of higher education for the long term. An event called the Educationist Transformation Project, an Educationist Transformation Conference at Wellesley College, started by Peter Lawrence and Victor Kazanzian, who just left Wellesley's position as Dean of the Religious Life Center at Wellesley, changed the face and promoted and created for the first time in almost 30 years dynamic information about how higher education and religion were merging together. The project brought together hundreds of people from across the country, people like Parker Palmer, people like Sharon Parks, college and university presidents, chaplains, students, and what happened is that these people descended upon Wellesley, and the most important thing that they said was, we had no idea so many people were interested in this topic. 1,000 people who gathered together and launched a movement that we're still seeing ramifications from today. That conversation in 1998, along with the events of 9/11, 3 years later, have launched organizations like the College and Character, the Journal of College and Character, which higher education utilizes as the primary focus of how student affairs interacts and intersects around character development. Almost half of the journal articles that have been produced over the last 12 years in this student affairs related journal have been related to religion and spirituality on campus. Soon after, Penn State University would build the largest multi-faith center in the country, a 60,000 square foot multi-faith center known as the Pascagoula Center for Spirituality and Ethics. Some people know about this. Two researchers from UCLA named Helen and Sandy Aston, who are famously known in student affairs realms, launched in 2005 the UCLA Study for Spirituality in Higher Education. That study you can read all about in a book called Cultivating the Spirit, which was published in 2010. It was a 6-year study that was a longitudinal-based study that was funded by the Templeton Foundation and produced the largest known research to date on how spirituality and religion are intersecting on the university campus. 300,000 different participants through an extension of one of the largest surveys that higher education produces in the country, was able to give some very serious information. Hear these things and think about it as a higher educator. On college campuses where spirituality was incorporated into the co-curricular, where it was healthfully expressed, there was a 400% decrease in mental health issues among students practicing religion and spirituality. There were higher than normal academic achievements among students, so grade went up, and also academics, sorry, I'm missing a word here. Compassion among students also went up. So it was a qualifier. It was an ability for the study to show how through these intersections of relationships and where spirituality was encouraged by the administration, students started to have better relationships with one another. And finally, admissions went up on college campuses where spirituality was encouraged as part of the admissions process and where students knew from the beginning that their spirituality would be encouraged on campus. So we continue that onward, and in 2012, two researchers at Messiah College in Pennsylvania, Rhonda and Jacob Jacobson, wrote a book called No Longer Invisible: Religion in Higher Education. And I would tell you that this is a book worth reading because in the book, they take all of the research and all the data, and they bring it together and they say, this is how religion on the college campus plays the major part. So there are 6 sites of engagement that they would argue are the places where religious and spiritual groups on campus can bring about things that the university is struggling with. Things like religious literacy, interfaith etiquette, framing knowledge, civic engagement, which has struggled mightily in the past years per capita on college campuses, convictions, and finally, character and vocation. Now, why does this mean anything to UUs? Because I will tell you that after I read all this research and found out about this, 2 years ago, I started and wrote a research grant to an organization called the Louisville Foundation. The Louisville Foundation and I went back and forth and finally produced and gave me the money to do a study called Multi-Faith in the Public University. Now, how many college students are there in the United States today? This is not a rhetorical question. Give me some thoughts. How many do you think are in college today? 3 million. Anybody else? 10 million. Anybody else? What? I can't hear you. 30 million. The answer is 20 million college students. 1 in every 31 American citizens are currently in higher education. So, 73% of those are in public universities. So I wrote this grant and I said, how can we look at the public university who's trying to do this? Now, some of you are familiar with an organization called the Interfaith Youth Corps and Ibu Patel and the work that he's been doing. We can talk about that more later. But when I engaged the public university realm, I started looking for where and how religion and spirituality were intersecting on the environment where 73% of all the students are. And what I found was that across the country, a movement is happening where universities all over the place are starting to adapt and promote religion and spirituality on their campuses. Penn State is just one. The University of Toledo has a Center for Religious Understanding. Out west, you see places like the University of Oregon, Oregon State, Portland State, and many other universities all across the country who are starting to engage in this topic, and large student affairs organizations that have membership in the multiple tens of thousands are having serious conversations about this. Now, what they're having conversations about are often first and foremost, how do we deal with the separation of church and state? But the problem is that from the start, they're missing the point. If you were to look at the First Amendment, if you were to look at the Constitution, you will find there is no such thing as a separation of church and state. For those of you that are out there and are social studies teachers, you will know that the First Amendment says that you cannot establish religion, so you can't have one dominant religion, which of course often ends up being Christianity, just by the fact that we're on a Christian calendar. And secondly, you cannot prevent the free exercise thereof. Because of this, and especially because of the lack of being able to prevent the free exercise thereof, universities are starting to have to challenge their policies about how they have related to religious groups on college campuses. And students, all of which seem to be moving toward the spiritual but not religious, as we all know, are looking for places and are seeking out communities that are different from what they've already been offered on college campuses. University administrators are saying, how do we work with certain groups on campus? What are the groups that we wish to work with on campus? And how do we approach this, which some people are saying is the last broad stroke of the co-curricular? And when I say last broad stroke, I want you to think that for almost 100 years, universities have been working to be more than just academic institutions. So thinking about women's centers, GLBT centers, sexual violence centers, multicultural centers, all of those kind of areas of the co-curricular are either in process or already satisfied to the most part in terms of how higher education works. The one piece of the pie that is left off is religion. And it's mostly because religion has been seen not just from a separation of church and state, but also because of its aggressive nature, or at least certain groups that are often aggressive in nature toward the university. So, as UUs, and as a progressive organization, and as a progressive group, the reality is that there is real opportunity to engage that sector, and real opportunity for us to be answering the question of where all the young adults are by responding and saying, let's invest ourselves in the most transformative moment in these students' lives up until this point, which is often college. Because all the framing stories that we hear from students often start to be embedded to them when they go off to college. And if there's 20 million students, well, I think that's a worthy investment. So I ask you, and I ask you to consider that as UUs, how do you want to engage young adults? Do you want to engage young adults from a distance? Do you want to send them off to college and wait for them to come back? Do you want to have Presbyterians need to connect them with UUs? Do you need to have more Methodists up here standing on the stage? You don't. What you need is more campus ministries, more chaplaincies, more people engaged on the college campus. So I would encourage you to understand that higher education is changing, and that if we come into partnership, if we see ourselves as partners with this changing environment that higher education is having to meet the needs and the well-roundedness hopes of creating global citizens in higher education, reinvest yourself on the college campus. Understand yourself as part of the story that higher education is trying to promote in the world today, and bring your unique presence of being UUs to the college campus, because we greatly need more of you. And I will tell you, anybody who wants to come to the University of Minnesota and help me with that 80,000 person campus would be very welcome. So we can talk more questions later, but thank you very much.